guys, Joe here today with another setup guide, and this time we're going to be tackling port forwarding on our SIBELL recorder. So keep in mind, if you are using an Elite recorder, that this video again is designed around SIBELL recorders. We do have a port forwarding video for Elite as well. You can find a link to that video in the description at the bottom of the page. The reason that we set up port forwarding is to allow our recorder to communicate with the World Wide Web, and in that instance it'll be able to talk to our smartphone or our computer so we can see our cameras anywhere, anytime. Before we get started, there's going to be some things that we need, software and tools that we have to have, so why don't we take a look at our introductory setup checklist.
First, make sure the recorder is powered on and you can see your cameras on the local display. Next, make sure there's an Ethernet cable firmly connected to the LAN port on your recorder. If you're using a recorder with more than one LAN port, use LAN port number 1. Also, make sure that same cable is firmly connected to a port supplying internet on your router. It's important to know that you shouldn't try to use any PoE ports for this setup. Many recorders have a group of onboard PoE ports. Those ports are for cameras only. We're also going to need a PC connected to the same router as the recorder, either by Ethernet or by Wi-Fi. As far as software goes, we will need to download and install the SIBELL IP Tool 2.0. This tool can scan the network to find our recorder and help us access it from our PC. This handy program can be found on the download section of our website, securitycameraking.com. Links are available on the screen, in the video description, and at the bottom of the page. There's some other important information you're also going to need. You're going to need to know the username and password for your recorder. You're also going to need to know the username and password for your router setup page, and keep in mind this is different than your Wi-Fi username and password. If you don't have this information, contact your internet service provider. Alright, that's everything we're going to need. Let's get started.
Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is open up a notepad or WordPad so that we can have that available to take down some important information as we go along. Alternatively, you can use a pen, pencil, or a piece of paper if you have some handy. The next thing that we need to do is open up the command prompt. You can do this by clicking your Start menu button and then typing the letters CMD into the search field, then just clicking the resulting icon or hitting enter on the keyboard. Once command prompt is open, you should see a black dialog box just like this with some white text. All we're doing here is getting some information. To do that, we need to enter a command called ipconfig, typed as ipconfig, then hitting enter into the keyboard. You'll see the result is a list of some information from your computer's Wi-Fi or Ethernet adapter. The information we want you to take note of here is the default gateway. Your default gateway won't necessarily be the same as the one you see here in the video. In fact, there's a good chance it's something different. That's okay and expected. The default gateway is the IP address we're using to access your router's settings. It's also used in a few other places as well. Whatever you see your default gateway as, go ahead and type that info into your notepad or write that down. Afterwards, you can close out your command prompt. Now that we have our default gateway written down, we're going to run the SIBELL IP tool. Go ahead and double-click the program. Once it's open for a second, it should populate a list of any SIBELL devices on the network. In our case, you can see the recorder populate here. The important thing to take note of here is the IP address of the unit. Let's go ahead, return to our notepad, and copy down the IP address of the recorder. Then, head back to SIBELL IP tool. Our next step is to access the recorder settings. There's a few reasons we want to do this, and we'll go over those shortly. First, we want to bring up the recorder. The easiest way to make that happen is to double-click the recorder listing in IP tool. This will open up a browser window in IE with the recorder's IP address. Next, log into the recorder using the same username and the same password you used to log into it locally. You'll notice that if this is your first time logging into the recorder from a browser, that it is prompting you to install a plugin. This plugin should be installed by clicking the link and then clicking Run on the dialog box that pops up at the bottom of the screen. Hit Yes to any windows that pop up asking for install requests. Once the program installs, then log out at the top of the screen here, close IE, and double-click the recorder's listing again in SIBELL IP tool. Log in one more time using your username and password for the recorder, and if you stay on this page long enough, you should see a camera populate in the live view. However, next let's just go ahead and click Function Panel at the top. So there's a lot of options on this menu, but right now we're only concerned with the network menu. There's a few settings we need to change and to lock down. So the first option we're going to click is the one called TCP/IP. On this menu, first notice to the left you'll see your other network menu sub-options. On the right you'll notice that the IP address info is there, but most of it's grayed out. That's because it's currently set by default to obtain an IP address automatically. Now to start with, this was okay because it allowed your ISP's router to assign a good working IP address to the recorder. The problem with that going forward is that the port forwarding settings we'll be setting up today rely on the IP address. If there's a power outage, or for some reason the recorder or hardware reboots, the recorder may not get the same IP address from the router it got before, and this will invalidate any port forwarding settings we do today. So what we do about this little problem is simply uncheck this box and then hit Apply. This will make the IP address that was assigned to the recorder static, so it will always be the same address no matter what, unless manually changed by us. Two other things we want to take note of are the default gateway that we see listed and the DNS that we see listed. We want to make sure our default gateway matches the exact same one we have written down, and if our DNS did not populate with info, simply use the exact same ones you see here and then click Apply. Next, we're going to be navigating over on our left side to the recorder's port menu. So go ahead and click Port under the Network submenu. We're going to be changing our default ports away from 80 and 6036 in our HTTP port and in our server port. We just want to make sure that we use anything other than the default ports. So for HTTP, we've chosen for ourselves 48300, and for server, we've chosen for ourselves 48301. These numbers are arbitrarily chosen from the private port range. You don't have to use the port numbers we've chosen here, just make sure they do fall within that private port range displayed on the bottom of the screen. Once you've chosen what ports you want to set to the recorder to, go ahead and apply these settings. Next, close out Internet Explorer, and then we do recommend that it's a good idea that you go ahead back to your Notepad or WordPad and copy down those port settings that you just chose for both the HTTP port and for the server port. We now need to get this port info into the router, and this will tell the router to allow traffic and communication into and out of those ports from the web. From our notes, we will need that default gateway we wrote down again. This time, we're going to open a browser window in Internet Explorer. We're going to want to clear out the address bar at the top and type in http:// your default gateway and hit enter. Then, it'll load up your router settings page. Simply log into your router using your router settings admin and password. Now that we're logged in, we're going to be going to the port forwarding settings. First though, I'd like to take the time to point out that not every router menu is going to look exactly the same. In fact, there's a really good chance your menus are very different and options may be found in totally different places. Though port forwarding and that process we're doing is fundamentally the same in any router, you may have some differences in appearance or the way you enter that info. You can always refer to your router's manual to find any of the options we'll be using today. Additionally, there's a website called portforward.com. They've done an amazing job of gathering a list of just about every router from every manufacturer out there. They have guides to navigate the menus of the routers they list, and if you have trouble finding out where certain options are located, a visit to their site and looking up your router's manufacturer and model might solve that problem. So for this TP-Link router, we are going to be going to the forwarding section and then virtual server. As a quick reference, many times the port forwarding section is found under a router's advanced settings or security and firewall. This particular router has the settings easily visible. So you'll see an area that looks like the top of a chart or a list, but it's empty because we haven't added any rules yet. The basic idea here is to input the IP address information along with the ports we chose from the recorder into this empty list of rules. So first, we're going to go ahead and click Add New. The first field we see is the service port. It doesn't matter which port we forward first, so we will start with the 48300 or the HTTP port. We're going to put that info into the service port field. Next, we're going to draw our attention to the IP address field. In this case, we're going to be putting the IP address of the recorder here. You can copy and paste that information over from your notes or just go ahead and type it in. Then we're going to move on to the internal port, and we're going to go ahead and put the same exact info we had for the service port there. For protocol, most routers will have the option to pick either TCP, UDP, or a both or all option. Make sure to choose TCP or all or both and go ahead and click that in. For status, we're going to leave that to enabled. Common service port is only related to predefined applications and isn't relevant to what we're doing, so again, we're also going to ignore this and we're just going to save the rule. Now you'll notice our rule is in here, and we have one more rule to add in for the server port information. So go ahead and click Add New one more time. So we're going to put the server port from our notes here, which is 48301. We're going to put the IP address in for the recorder one more time, the server port again, all, enabled, and save. So now we've input and saved both rules. If this was done correctly, our port forwarding is now complete and our recorder is talking to the web. We can test this very quickly by using one of the many port forwarding testing sites available. My personal choice is the website yougetsignal.com. When the page loads up, click on Port Forwarding Tester. On the next page, you'll see an IP address, which is fine. Simply leave that the way it is. That's your WAN IP, and it's how devices on the internet find and talk to devices on your local network. Think of it sort of like an internet street address. While you have that info on the screen, go ahead and write down your WAN IP into your notes and save that file or paper somewhere that you can find it again in the future. Next, we're going to take a look at the port number that's next to the IP address on yougetsignals.com's port forwarding page. We want to use one of the ports we forwarded. So we're going to go ahead and change that 80 to 48300 and then go ahead and click check. We've got a green flag and it says port 48300 is open, so we have successfully port forwarded. Let's go ahead and test 01 also just to be safe. Awesome. So if you can see here, both 48300 and 48301 are now successfully port forwarded. We can close out anything here, make sure we save our notes for later. And congratulations, you have successfully port forwarded your recorder.
All right, guys, congratulations on setting up port forwarding on your recorder today. So if you had some trouble doing that, please be advised that our #1 recommended method of getting remote viewing up and running is actually P2P. It's a lot simpler and it's just as secure. So if you had some trouble getting this knocked out, go ahead and give our P2P setup guide for SIBELL recorders a look. You can find a link to that video in the description at the bottom of the page. Now, what can we do with this information? Well, we've got another video coming up soon about how to add your recorder to SIBELL Mobile. This will allow you to view the recorder anywhere in the world from either your smartphone or your tablet. You can also add that information to your Mac or your PC using SIBELL software, SIBELL NVMS. I would suggest you check out that video, also for the link in the description at the bottom of the page. Until next time, have a great day, guys, and stay safe.